Chapter 24. The hours passed slowly on the kill room floor. Every day Anders would ask Patanga about the loading bay, and every day he'd answer with, "Not yet!" Eventually, Anders stopped asking. He got on with collecting slops and taking orders from Gollum. He even became quite good at it. Then during his 4th week, Patanga got him the transfer he'd been wishing for, and his days working the kill room were over. No more slops, no more pulsating eyeballs. It was then that Anders learned something, that all paths are eventual, that once you chose acceptance and got on with the journey, naturally, everything fell into place. Now the pendulum of luck was swinging his way. His plan to escape Rockhampton, to escape John and Andrew, and regain his independence was coming true. Before him lay a new path, his own path, and for the first time in his 21 years, he felt as though life had meaning, giving him reason to continue. It was a nice Saturday afternoon. Anders sat on the decking cross-legged and barefooted, in his vest and his pants rolled up, showing ankle. A bag of fruit lay open beside him, warming and softening in the glaring hot sun. He took his knife, leaning over a wooden board, humming along to classical music, to Strauss, too, Voices of Spring, as it played from a radio inside their room. On the board he cut mango and papaya, pausing only to suckle fruit juices from his fingers. Then he got up. He'd already scattered the banana, now he scattered the rest. "And now we eat," he said, smiling. "We have lunch together, yes?" He laughed, looking into the tree. "You come down now, yes?" He wiped the board with a tea towel. "It's a hot one," he added, going into their room, opening the fridge and welcoming its coolness. "I'm sweating." There was bread and wine and beetroot. He took them and drank by the kitchen top. Then he buttered the bread and ate some. "Alcohol from a mug," he said, pouring another drop. "So unsophisticated." He drank more wine and looked at the bottle. "Chilled and sweet," he said, "just as I like it." While preparing his meal, he would appear now and then on the decking, drinking wine with mug in hand, talking to the tree, as if the possum was there, trying to coax it out of hiding. He swallowed more wine. "Come now, old friend." He glanced at the untouched fruit around the balcony. "It's been too long." He kept talking and returned to the kitchen top, giggling now, reaching into his backpack for something. "I won't tell," he said, waving a tin of sardines in the air. "But will you?" He opened them using the ring pull on the tin, scraping fish on his plate with a fork. "You see that?" he laughed. "You see how easy that was? And without using that Neanderthal's stupid pocket knife." He sucked his fingers, drank more wine. "A big man like him getting all excited over cream corn. Well, too much brawn and not enough brains. That's what I say." He laughed again and looked outside on the decking. "Not wise like us two, old friend." He grated beetroot over sardines, dressed them with peppercorns, oil and vinegar. Then he buttered more bread and gathered everything together. Plate, mug, bottle. He sat down at the table, drinking and eating, smiling now, with beetroot and fish showing on his teeth. Watching the possum limp around the balcony's edge, nose dipped, sniffing each piece of fruit. It seemed different, he thought, as though wary of him. "You've not visited for a while," he said. "What's wrong?" It looked around its surroundings. Its eyes darkened and drawn together, staring at him, and then sniffing fruit, then pausing to look into their room. Strangely, Anders thought, as though staring underneath the bunks. He watched it limp from one piece of mango to the other. The way it moved, he guessed it had been in some kind of fight. It looked hurt and frightened, and he thought about helping it. Then he reminded himself not to interfere. This was a wild animal, surviving nature. He knew this is how it is, and like Anders some weeks earlier, the possum would have to wait for the pendulum of luck to swing its way. They scoffed their food now, both watching each other while doing so. Anders forking fish into his mouth and sipping wine, and the possum gnawing on mango, eating the skin and all, popping up now and then with yellow pulp around its whiskers. From the radio, Jockey was talking over the classical music as it played out, reaching the end of a long crescendo. Anders had forgotten the radio was even playing, and he sat leaning forward, happy listening to fruit pulping inside the possum's mouth. "That's it," he said as it bobbed down for more. "Build up your strength." There was silence before the jockey spoke again to introduce the next one. "Okay, gang," he said excitedly, his Australian accent high-pitched and enthusiastic. We got a real beauty for you now, The Ecstasy of Gold by the great Ennio Morricone. He paused to let out a breath. I can tell you, gang, let me tell you, there ain't no bad or ugly about this one. Just the good. Just pure class. The sound of the fast piano playing took over, followed quickly by violins. Then, moving in the darkness of the underbunk, a shadowy figure was groaning, twisting and turning, moving his belly, pushing away suitcases, while the heavenly voice of the soprano joined the music, growing faster, louder. Then suddenly he appeared. The madman, standing in dust-covered clothes, picking cobwebs from his dirty face and overgrown beard. His Ned Kelly t-shirt tattered and torn, his bald head patchy around the sides, dotted with grey hairs, but staring at the back of Anders' chair with his dark eyes, making fists with both hands and cracking his knuckles. He seemed more bullish, more menacing than ever. He reached towards the radio, twisting the volume dial with his fingers. The sound and pace of the music increased, but Anders was unaware. He just stared as though in awe of the possum bread in his mouth, wine in his hand, the madman emerging behind him now with a pile of loose change in his hand, fingering through it, searching for that 50-cent piece. Suddenly it turned dark. There were clouds and noise in the sky. "Let it rain down on us," Anders said to the possum. "Today has been a hot one." He took more wine and laughed as the dark clouds gathered above him. "We'll sit this out together," he said, "for there's a storm heading our way." And he was right. There was.